Monomoy Beach extends off from Chatham into Nantucket Sound in a southerly direction something like 10 miles. It is approximately 2 miles wide, and is composed wholly of beach sand, a growth of beach grass, occasionally a brush swamp, and a few meadows. Its topographic makeup is sand dunes and hollows, all sizes and shapes, and the sand continues to blow and shift. Today there is a sand dune, tonight a dry gale of wind, tomorrow a piece of level ground. Today there is a piece of level ground, tonight a sand storm, tomorrow a hollow. In the latter part of the 19th century, the only outlet going down over the shoals to the east and the north was the Pollock Rip Slough, a channel between two shoals. Moored at the entrance of the Pollock Rip Slough was the Pollock Rip lightship, number 47. It was the duty of the crew of a lightship in those days to count and log the shipping that went one way and the other over the shoals. They would come down over the shoals, pass out through Pollock Rip Slough, and head up the backside of the Cape for their destinations. Monomoy Beach is bounded on the east by the broad Atlantic, and the seas roll in from an expanse of 3,000 miles and break and pound and roar upon the strand in an unbroken line. In the days gone by, in the olden times, the backside of Monomoy Beach was rightly called the graveyard of the Atlantic. More ships and more schooners grounded and pounded themselves to pieces and washed upon the beach. More men lost their lives and their bodies strewn along the backside of Monomoy Beach than any other like locality in all the world. On a cold, grey November day in 1884, the wind was to the westward and schooners were passing through Pollock Rip Slough all day. At sunset that night the head of the fleet was up off the Highlands. From the Highlands down to the tip of the end of Monomoy Beach, they were scattered along. At dark the wind had died away to a dead calm. At 9 o'clock that night the wind breezed up to the northeast. At 12 o'clock there was a living gale of wind with snow sweeping down across the backside of Cape Cod and Monomoy Beach. Whatever became of that fleet of schooners that passed over the shoals that day nobody knows. How many of them were that far advanced that they rounded the Cape and reached their destinations? How many of them shortened sail and jogged off into the channel and saved themselves? How many of them turned back and tried to get down through Pollock Rip Slough into smoother water? How many of them foundered on the spot, nobody knows. But the next day the backside of Cape Cod and Monomoy Beach was strewn with wreckage. The news leaked down through to the old Monomoy life-saving station, Captain William F. Tuttle of Harwich, either by gunners or by fishermen, that there had been some terrible wrecks off the backside of Monomoy Beach and Cape Cod, and to look out for bodies. The first watch down to Point Rip from 8 to 12 was a man by the name of Armand Wixon of Dennisport. Near the old Monomoy lighthouse that night he saw an object washing in the surf. A sea would break, run up the beach, and the object would roll over and over, the sea would recede and the object would roll back. In telling the story, Armand Wixon admitted that for a minute he had the jitters, but he waded in, kicked the object, and it was nothing but a bunch of seaweed rolled up in the shape of a man, washing in the surf. He went on 5 minutes more, then he saw another object in the surf. This time a sea would break, run up the beach, the object would roll partly over, the sea would recede, and the object roll back. Wixon wasn't concerned this time, for he said to himself, "It's nothing but another bunch of seaweed." So he waded in again and kicked the object. As he did, he had the sensation of kicking an old decayed pumpkin. He had no lantern, so he bent way over and looked, and there at his feet was a dead man washing in the surf. Poor Armand Wixon, standing there that night at 9 o'clock, 2 miles from the station with a dead man washing at his feet. Previous to this, a watch found a body in the surf and hastened away to the station for help. When they returned, the body had floated away and was lost. After that, the orders were that whenever they found a body in the surf, before going for help, to haul it up over the high water mark. So Armand Wixon bent over, turned the dead man on his back, put his hands down under his armpits, raised up, and in that position he walked backwards over the high water mark. He hastened away to the station and notified Captain Tuttle. The captain, in return, called out every hand and put them out on the beach to hunt more bodies. At daylight they had found 4. Then the orders were to assemble those bodies over on the inside, on the bay side, ready to take them across to the mainland. The only way those men could get across to the mainland in winter was in dories. So they loaded the bodies into a 13-foot dory, 2 in the bow and 2 in the stern. That very afternoon those nameless sailors were buried in South Harwich Cemetery. They were buried in common pine boxes, no services, nothing but a simple prayer. At the head of each one of those graves was placed a marble marker. They are there today, almost concealed in the grass. They were placed there to protect, preserve, and perpetuate the identity of those graves. That very afternoon, not the next day or the third day, but that very afternoon mothers, wives and sweethearts somewhere, someplace in some land, were waiting, hoping, longing for promised letters that never, ever came. For decades the remains of those young men have been resting there almost in the shadow of the church, unknown and unnamed, the victims of the backside of Monomoy Beach, once branded the graveyard of the Atlantic because of episodes like this.